Now 250,000. Now I'm going to get 275. High, I'm going to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4, 325. High, I'm going to get 3 1/4, I'm going to get 325. Now half. Now I'm going to get 300.
And good morning from Dallas at Lincoln Center, right off of the Tollway and LBJ Freeway. We welcome you to Mike Jones Show, and we're happy to have you with us. We've had a little extended away time, and just kind of letting things settle down after the new year and the holidays and all the things going on. But there's a lot to talk about, so we're going to be covering a lot of material this morning. We're going to talk about everything from the inauguration to the folks that are celebrating Martin Luther King Day. We send our best wishes to all the folks that are participating in the parades. And of course, we're getting ready for the inauguration in Washington, D.C., and all the things that are going on there. There'll be a couple of interesting side notes to that. I'm going to go directly into our guest today. He is extremely well known in Dallas and around the United States. Bill Wallace is unquestionably a networker's networker. People learn from him. I've learned from him. He doesn't even know that. We've never had that conversation. But Bill is the founder of Success North Dallas, and he's involved in many other things besides that. And so we're going to, at this time, want to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you, sir. What a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Well, we've known each other a long time. We first met when you were up trying to sell me something.
I'm sure that's right.
Sure, that's right. And I think you got a few $100s from me that night, maybe more than that.
Well, I may have to return.
But what a pleasure. No, I followed your career. But, you know, for the start, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
It's been bugging. How did you get into this? How did you end up becoming, quote, not just an auctioneer, but the auctioneer's auctioneer?
Well, I appreciate that. You know, it all started when I was just a kid. You know, like many, and I would say most auctioneers, they went to auctions with family members. And so my grandfather took me to auctions when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and I was actively buying at 7, 8 years old, and putting things in auctions, and then my parents went to auctions all the time and were antique collectors. They were big time going to auctions all the time, and I ended up working for an auctioneer when I was a junior in high school, and here we are, 42 years later.
So you did an apprenticeship with an auctioneer?
I did. In fact, I did that in Houston with a gentleman who passed away about a year and a half ago named Don Mudd. And he was a fantastic auctioneer. He's from Indiana. He moved to Houston when oil was great and the town was super nice and new and clean, and there was freeways and nobody was on them. And he ran an antique auction house.
That was Houston?
That was Houston.
Nobody on? Okay.
There was nobody on the freeways. It was like, they were ahead of their time, then they got behind the times. But Don was great, and then I went off to auction school after my first year of college at North Texas, and got an immediate opportunity to work with a guy named Joe Small here in Dallas. He ran an antique auction house off Webb Chapel and Beltline, and here we are.
You know, what some people don't realize is the third largest auction house in the world is actually in Dallas, and people don't know that.
I know.
But it started as a little store above the bank at Highland Park Shopping Center with a gentleman by the name of Ivy as a coin. He was a coin dealer. And that ran into two partners, and they formed Heritage Auctions, which is, I did collectibles. How could collectibles become the third largest auction house in the world?
Well, it's funny because, those guys were really just coin traders.
Yeah.
And that was their passion, and I've actually met with them, tried to create an opportunity with them about 5 or 6 years ago, and met with the principals down at Heritage Gallery, and we weren't able to make the deal work, but we're not through yet either. So you never know you never know who you're going to do business with before it's all over with.
It was so funny because my dad had some coins and some family coins, so my first trip down there, I met Steve Ivy. Mm-hmm. We became friends, and then we were in some of the Dallas Summer Musicals, cast parties together, hosting them. And his beautiful wife, Linda, always had the largest hat. She was a hat lady. It was interesting. So I asked him one day, I said, now, do you auction hats too? He said, no, I just buy them.
Probably have rooms of hats.
Exactly, like some people have rooms of shoes.
Yes, yes. Oh, well, you have motivated a lot of people in business, and in fact, I remember when Ben Carson was running for president, and there was a networking event over at Prestonwood Country Club, and I attended that event, and that's where I ran back into to Jeff here, Jeff Crilly, that operates this studio, and I know that was another time where we got reacquainted.
Exactly.
I probably have 10 of your business cards. It's one of those deals where, yeah, give me your business card.
We always have to have a business card.
But you know, the new generation doesn't think so.
Well, the new generation, if I'm mentoring you, they think so.
Me too.
They think so.
Me too.
Because it's very, very, very important.
But when we have auction school, which we have auction school as a side note, starting Friday at America's Auction Academy, we'll have students from all over the United States here in the Metroplex, and we're at a new location, actually very near Frisco. And so,
Where?
So right off of what is it, 121?
121.
Across from Nebraska Furniture Mart.
Oh, right there then you're in the colony, basically.
I think the actual address may be the colony, but perhaps it is. But anyway, so if anybody's interested in attending auction school, it starts Friday. It runs Friday to Friday. It's an 8-day school, and you can get the hours that it takes to take the state test and add another profession to your list of accomplishments and education and resume. And I've said this before, to me, now is the perfect time to pick up new skills.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a lot of people aren't doing anything. They're sitting around trying to figure out what they're going to do, and I say get up and go do it. But business card's always been on the list. And people think that's crazy. Of course, you know what my business card is now.
Yeah, it's a token, much like a poker chip.
Yeah, it's designed as a poker chip. And the thing I like about now, not everybody can afford those to give away in mass amounts.
Right.
I told people, I've been telling people for years and years, my goal is to give away 500 business cards a month. It is you're working the odds game. You give 500 business cards away in a month. The odds are you're going to get some business from somebody. And so,
but you've touched on something, and I think it's something that's very important. When you talk about your poker chip business card, in networking, and we'll get into networking in a little bit, and I'll get into some about Success North Dallas and how my two mentors, Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines, and Roger Meyer. One day, Herb Kelleher looked at me, and I was in the insurance business, and I ended up working with 164 startups. But Herb looked at me, and he actually said, Wallace, there's 5,453 of you all out there, meaning insurance agents. And he said, when you figure out why I should do business with you, come back. Now get out and figure it out. And you can hear Kelleher's. I can hear him, even though it was just 2 years since he's passed. I mean, I sat with the family at the funeral. It was an incredible relationship. And that's why I went out and I looked at every networking group back in 1988. And I didn't look at why people went to them. I looked for what people did not like. Mm-hmm. And I found a cute Buddhist word called sadhana, which is a taboo against what makes one feel uncomfortable. And I had this list of things, and I said, I'm going to put a sadhana against all of these. And one of them was card pushers.
Yep.
Giving cards away without having asked permission or something different. And that's what we'll segue into. Mm-hmm. But card pushers, pitch bookers, selling of wares in the rooms, selling of wares from the lectern. I mean, bait and switch. Charging of guests, we had to change that. And women. Back in 1988, women were not welcome in networking. And so one of the things you have to do, much like you've done, is set yourself apart from the herd. What makes you different? Why should I remember you? And you can do that from creating transformational change through disruption.
Yep.
And women were actually my disruptor because back in 1988, I made Success North Dallas almost a third women, 30% from day one. And ladies, you're out there, you're why we're here going to our 32nd year this October. And you are a disruptor, but you help create transformational change. We created a place where it was safe for you to come. And my whole goal in Success North Dallas was to create a safe space. Our qualifications for membership are so simple. They're threefold. The first is be a success in your own eyes. Nobody has the right to define what success is for you but you. Second, honor your commitments. Let's go back to that thing called the handshake. And third, and most importantly, be a giver. It's all about our fellow men and women. And that's how I started Success North Dallas with 14 people. And our members have now, did a tally, 101 companies have come out of that room. Almost 1,200 jobs. And soon to be 8 Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs of the Year. So it's got a legacy. And it's named North Dallas because I didn't have a big enough vision back then. So get a vision and make it big. I wanted to sell insurance in North Dallas. So I named it Success North Dallas, even though I trademarked Success and Success North Dallas, but probably should have named it Success World because we have 3 countries involved. We've got 10 states now, 12 states as we've gone virtual and set up a virtual membership as well as an in-person membership.
Yep.
But I give you that just as a little bit of a background, but a business card.
Yep.
What is a business card? It's a card that 80% chance when you exchange it, both of them will go in the trash can.
Yep.
95% chance one will. So you've got to do something to make it a little bit different. Is that the presentation? Is that the poker chip? Or is the fact that, in my case, I take the business card out of my pocket and I hand it to you. It comes out of the pocket like this. I hand it to you like this, two-handed. And some people might ask, why does it have a rounded corner? Just one. So you'll ask. But it also needs to tell a story. In this case, success, the logo, that's what we all aspire to. The interconnecting C's of the logo, well, that's actually how we do it. And I turn it over, connecting the right people for the right reasons at the right time. How might I help you get connected? Because when we talk about networking, 2 people meet each other, bam. If you don't do something to set yourself apart, to set that card apart, to have something memorable, then you really have nothing. That's when 80% chance. Both cards are going to go in the trash can. But if you do something that's a little hook, and a friend of mine, Jeff Hazlett, and we started C-Suite together. We've got a couple 100,000 members around the U.S. now and the world. But back in 2014 at the Fairmont Hotel in Dallas. And one of the things that we've strived to do is keep that safe place, keep card pushers out, but make these cards at Success North Dallas and C-Suite relationship cards. So there's a 118 contest, and that's what he came up with a number of years ago at Success North Dallas. It was a national contest. And a gentleman named Chris Westfall out of Success North Dallas actually won it. He's in Houston now. But you have 118 seconds. That's the average elevator ride in New York City. You have 8 seconds to tell them who you are and 110 seconds to learn everything you can about them while leaving some form of a little hook at the end. Just something that says, gosh, Mike, auctioneer school. I didn't even know there was one. I'd love to get together for a cup of coffee because I want to hear more about that. And you leave a little hook, and that gives you the opportunity to take this into this. And what is this? This is when Mike and I start weaving our networks together, net weaving. And I am now weaving myself into all of Mike's networks. And conversely, he is weaving himself into all of mine. And that's net weaving. That's the second level. So we've got networking, where You meet somebody, boom, you better do something to make it memorable. You better not be looking over their shoulder. You better think about the 3 A's, and we'll come back to that, but it's approachable, accessible, approachable, and accountable. Get that in the right order, Bill. Accessible, approachable, and accountable. And then you have the third level of networking. And the third level is servant leadership. And it's when I meet Mike, and the first thing that's going through my mind is who I might introduce Mike that would better Mike, and perhaps Mike could better them. Yeah. Those are the 3 levels of networking: networking, net weaving, and then servant leadership. It's so simple.
It's interesting. You and I run in a lot of the same circles. And we
do.
We do. And, you know, just like with Jeff Crilly here at Real PR and Real News Communications, he approached me many years ago. In fact, he actually, when he was still in news reporting, he right down the street about one exit at Midway, that's where my office was there for many, many years. And Jeff, when he was doing Really Crilly on Channel 4, he actually covered our auction school. And we still show that clip from Channel 4 today. They'll see it next week before they leave, because we do a whole montage of showing them how the more things change, the more they stay the same. And we share with them about a 10-minute, 15-minute episode with Bob Phillips from Texas Country. They did 2 stories. They covered the very first auction school, and then a few years ago they came back and covered it again. And so we've had a really great relationship with all of the media. But Jeff's real good about trying to connect the right people, and then you and I know some others as well. But we think, the other thing is we think alike, and a lot of people know that I'm very passionate about Scottish Rite Children's Hospital here in Dallas, and St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis, and every class we do at the school, we always do a fundraising auction, and we ask all of our students to bring an item, and then I will give them an item to sell as well. So they're guaranteed 2 items to sell, and we do it on Facebook Live. And what that does, because I'm sure sometimes they wonder, well, now why are we doing this? Well, my point is, and I tell people, auction school, it is auction school. However, I consider it a life school. I'm there to change their life, and I'm wanting them to be community leaders, not just in the auction business to make money and make a living, but to really make a difference where they live, become an influencer, and do great things for their community at home. And I think that we've done that. You know, and I've got to give a shout out to my students. It's our students and our instructors and staff, and you know, cumulatively in the last 10 years, I guess we have presented $300,000 to St. Jude and $300,000 to Scottish Rite. We kind of cut it down the middle.
That's fabulous. But $300,000 to each of them?
Yeah, yeah. And we're proud of that, because that's leaving a legacy. And what was really funny when you said, why is it called Success North Dallas? Well, see, I kind of did the same thing. We started out in 92, 93 as Texas Auction Academy. I was thinking Texas, which our biggest competitor in that space is Missouri Auction School. And that's where I went to auction school. So I thought, okay, we'll do Texas Auction Academy. And we ran it that way for a long time. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, but I had incorporated it as America's Auction Academy, knowing that someday we would be able to take it to the next level. And so that's what we did. About 3 years ago, we flipped the switch from Texas to America's, to the chagrin of some that love the Texas name. And people need to understand that, you know, we're not abandoning Texas. We're embracing the United States and patriotism. And I really believe the free enterprise system. You know, I mean, as a kid in Houston, I got really involved with junior achievement, and I was a Southeast Texas president and traveled to Bloomington, Indiana 2 or 3 years as a delegate and leader on the buses going up. You know, we'd have 2 or 3 buses go from
that's cool.
Up to Bloomington and stay at the campus for a week. And you know, that's where I met people like William Simon, the former Treasury Secretary under Nixon, Zig Ziglar, people like that.
God, one of my
huge influences.
Well, it's brings up, if you don't love your community's not going to love you.
There you go.
It's just that simple. It goes back to that servant leadership. And it goes back to how do you position yourself? Networking's one thing, but it's the positioning yourself. It's what sets yourself apart from the herd. Because if you think of Texas, you think of cows, a cow herd. And a cow herd is just a big oval. But there's 4 that have separated themselves from the herd. It's the trail boss up front. There's 2 outriders to keep the herd in. And there's a drag to pick up strays behind the herd. And if you superimpose people for that cattle, think about it. Why would I ever want to go into the herd to find somebody to buy from, to find an auction house, to find somebody to date even, when 4 have already separated themselves from the herd? So the question, and it's a question to almost leave you with, is what separates you from the herd? What's your thing? Is it a Texas auction house? Is it a poker chip that's a business card of which I have the 4 that Mike has given to me sitting in the corner of my main desk drawer? Every time I open it, I see him and I think about him. And I think, I wonder what he's selling now. It's not I think about how's he doing, but I do. But first thought that goes through my mind when I look down there is, what's he selling now? and I start laughing. Or which charity auction? You know, I was one of the 20 that founded the Ronald McDonald House here. And that opened up a whole different thing, to sit on the charities board, to sit on the grant committee. But things like that open new avenues for you, new avenues within your community, new avenues within your nation. And there's 3 A's, and I want you to think hard about these when we talk about them. But you have to be accessible. You can't be walking around with your head down with no cards. Said no cards. Over in the corner, you can't be. I have to be able to find you to do business with you. Because the chances are you're not going to find me. I'm the one with the need. I'm going to go looking. Now, you may find me and create a need, as we did in the insurance industry, where, like I said, I worked with 164 startups because they needed fresh sets of eyes. But you have to be accessible. I've got to be able to find you. And once I find you, you have to be approachable. You can't be walking around with your head down. You can't have your name tag over here on this side. You got to have it on this side, where I right eye to right eye contact, where I can see, especially now with COVID. And you've got to make me feel like the most important person in the room. When I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. Don't be looking over my shoulder to see who else is in the room, who else you could possibly talk to. Make eye-to-eye contact, preferably right eye to right eye contact, because the right eye, the history tells us, and the romance tells us, is the vision straight into the heart or to the soul. Firm handshake. And make me feel, in fact, cut to the chase, love on me.
Yep.
That's simple. Love on me.
Yep.
And then after you're accessible and approachable, you have to be accountable. Accountable, ... to that relationship that begins from the first encounter. And I challenge you, rest assured, you don't know when that's going to be. You don't know when that's going to be. So you're on 24/7, folks. And that's the fun part. That's why Mike and I met each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's everything you just said, I tell in auction school. Right down to when you're walking, walk with your head up.
Oh.
Don't have your head. That's a real peeve with me. Somebody that looks like, and I use a lot of country, comments like, don't act like your best dog just died. You need to be confident. You need to carry yourself like you're successful, and you need to make eye contact with everybody you run into. Stay off your phone. Real pet peeve with me.
You had a key word in there, everybody. Because you don't know who's sitting next to you. You don't know who's walking by you. That may be your next $1 million client,
right.
And you just ignored me.
Yeah. Another thing that it's funny, I was watching. I'm political, and everybody knows that. I don't know how much you know, but I'm pretty outspoken, and I go to events, and I've been to inaugurations. I've been to several, and I was watching one of the gentlemen that was running for president and in the primaries, and I knew he didn't have a chance, but I knew the guy didn't have a chance when I looked at where he had placed his American flag. He had it on the wrong side, and I pointed that out to somebody, and I said, he didn't stand a chance. He doesn't even know the basics, and because I'm a pin guy, everybody knows that, and they know I've always got a U.S. pin on, always. I mean, the only time I don't is if I'm not wearing a sport coat, and even then sometimes I'll put it on because it's just who I am. And but those are pet peeves with me. And I remember I can't remember. I wouldn't point them out anyway. But I will help people not embarrass themselves with things like that, because there are others, especially veterans, anyone who's ever placed an American flag on a stage, on a dais. Those are the little things that set you apart from everybody else. I'll tell you a quick story. So several years ago, Lori, my wife at the time, and who runs the auction schools, by the way. We're involved with 2 auction schools. We have America's Auction Academy, and then we purchased Worldwide College of Auctioneering in Iowa, which was established in 1933. And those classes are coming up in March. But we had gone to an inauguration. I think it was George W. Bush's at the time. But we were filling some time, and we were making the rounds, and she had been a paralegal, so she really wanted to go to the Supreme Court. And this is when everything was pretty accessible. And we literally walked into the Supreme Court. We walked in the building, and they are giving a tour, and they have everybody seated. And this goes back to how you carry yourself. And even just being in town, I'm in a suit and tie, and I had an American flag on. And I walked in to the Supreme Court building. The tour guide was making a presentation. She and I walked in. She thought I was either a senator or a congressman.
Of course.
The first thing she said, "Sir, would you like to speak?" And I was thinking, well, I could.
Of course. I'm a speaker, of course.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about? Anyway, that was a funny moment. Just one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. I thought, well, now that's just awesome.
I could just see that. What would you like for me to auction?
That's right. Oh, anyway, that was funny.
Those are fun things, but it's, again, the flag sets you apart from the herd.
Yeah.
I've got pins that have been given to me when I've spoken. I'm also a professional speaker.
Sure.
I speak on networking. I chaired the marketing for the National Speakers Association, North Texas, a couple of years ago, and I absolutely loved it. But it's the pen. It can set yourself apart. It's any little thing that makes a person remember you.
Yep.
It's any little, this pen, for instance.
Yes, I've noticed that pen.
People don't realize it. That's a slave collar with a rod through it that has broken it. And it represents a company called the Deliver Fund. And I helped move the Deliver Fund here to Dallas, their headquarters. And they do the analytics on trafficking. And they can do more on trafficking in 2 to 3 hours, finding people, networking, that spider's web. This phone number was used in New York. It was used again in Florida, used again here. This email was used again. And the #1 trafficking site in the world for many, many years was a place called Backpage.
Okay.
And Backpage was headquartered here in Dallas. And they, with Homeland Security, shut Backpage down. But the fun part is, and this pen is very special to me, the fun part is 6 months later, to add insult to injury, they moved into Backpage's old offices. But that's a story that'll make you remember the pen,
Sure.
make you remember the Deliver Fund.
Sure.
They moved into their offices.
Wow.
And we had one heck of a party.
I bet that's right. Speaking of what all you're doing, of course, you do Success North Dallas, but you also have the suites. Tell me about that business because, I don't know enough about it, but I also know that you have a presence on the tollway right here in Plano, but then you also have offices in Frisco. And of course, I've got a whole history in Frisco. I moved to Frisco when it had 4,000 people there. There was nobody there. And 121 wasn't a freeway.
No.
We had the fruit stand at 121 in Preston. That's all we had.
Oh, yeah, and the barbecue pit at Preston and at Park in Preston.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would drive out there. I'm native Dallas. I grew up here in Park Cities. And, we have offices, a group called Economic Transformational Technologies. We have offices at the Star in Frisco. Also have a studio there. And
now we've got people. We have people all over the world that watch this. I mean, we have people watching in South Africa and Germany, and so tell them what the Star is for those that don't know.
Well, there's a gentleman who has the Star as his logo, and that Star is on the helmets of a football team. It's on the jerseys. It's in Frisco. His name is Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones, through a public-private partnership, built an entire complex for the Cowboys world headquarters at the Star. We office in Jerry's building, and it's been phenomenal. It's been wonderful to be out there. But that's a part-time gig, helping to introduce people. I make connections, and that's why they brought me in out there. And we've had a ball being there and the Cowboy Club and seeing Jerry and seeing his helicopter land in the middle. We have a boardroom that actually looks over the practice fields, of which they have 2 outside and 1 inside. But at the Ford Center at the Star, Frisco, the city of Frisco now plays all of their football games there.
It's a great hook.
Hook, I couldn't believe it. Public-private partnership. I don't know what Frisco paid him to come there. But, I mean, the incentive.
It was a good investment.
It was. And Jerry had bought land. The first land he bought here in North Texas was in Frisco, which became the home development of Starwood, which was the first major gated community in Frisco. Still pristine. I have many friends that live there. And then we live in Stonebriar. I live in Stonebriar there in Frisco, having moved north. But my first memory of Frisco was hunting. Mm-hmm. We would go out to Frisco. Actually, we had stables at Spring Valley and Preston, if you can believe that. Oh, yeah. But we would go out to Frisco, and there was a Dairy Queen, there was the Abbey Restaurant, and there was a lumber yard.
Well, you remember.
And I think that was about it.
You remember on Preston, or 289.
281, 289.
It was the Royal Drive-In.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where all the farmers, all the farmers and ranchers in that area met there for their coffee in the morning. And that was just, and then as the area grew, they built a Montessori school just north of there. That's where my daughter started school, was the Montessori in Frisco. But my first memory of Frisco was in the early years. I auctioned off the Western Auto store in Frisco, and then ended up the school, Texas Auction Academy, used to be located in Frisco, and I lived there, and so. Yeah, I've got a lot of history there. I was actually on the committee that designed the street signs and the lights.
Western Auto, that brings my uncle. He had a number of Western Auto stores out in West Texas, Plainview, Lubbock, Amarillo, and we would go out there. It was a long drive to get to Plainview, Texas.
You got to want to go there.
You got to want to go there. You got to want to go there. And half of it was 2 lanes. I remember as a kid driving up there, and I remember bringing back a Flyer bike.
Yep.
A big old bike. I mean, the bike was as big as some of the cars are today.
Well, they did of course, I'd love to have an original.
Oh, my God.
Western Flyer. But they did back around 90, probably 92 maybe, they created a reproduction of that bike. And I have one of those.
Do you really?
Yeah. So I know exactly how big it is.
See it
and let me tell you, it's heavy too.
Yeah, and it had that center column or crossbar.
Oh, they were great. It's really funny you mentioned West Texas and Western Auto. And, of course, the people that know me know that Western Auto is kind of one of my legacies because I sold a Western Auto every week for 20 years. I was their auctioneer. I was their guy. And in Arkansas and Texas, and we were doing some in Georgia, a lot of them in Louisiana. But when you mention West Texas, Andrews, Post, Brownfield, Dimmitt, I sold all those stores. So I basically lived in all those little towns, and it was you couldn't ask for a greater experience as a young man in his 20s and 30s, traveling the United States, selling those stores, and White's Autos and all that,
White's.
Tasco's and Firestone stores. That was pretty much the 80s for me.
There's a funny story that comes into that, and if you look where they were built along the railroad, and you think about, there's a company, I was in the lumber business until 1983, and I went in the insurance business then, but we were in the wholesale lumber business, and but when I first went in the lumber business, I had West Texas, and one of the companies was Foxworth Galbraith.
Sure.
And it was a merger. Foxworth was the lumber company, Galbraith was a steel company, and they merged. And Galbraith provided the rails for the railroad, and Foxworth provided the lumber for the offices, the homes. And so they had these small lumber, and there was one of those, original was in Frisco, and then it became Simsmore Bush, but it was a Foxworth Galbraith. And they followed the railroad, and they built these small lumber yards and steel yards right along the railroad, just like, and then Western Auto, they would build the stores because there was no auto parts store, there was no tire store.
Well, I look at a Western Auto or a White's Auto, basically what they were was a small town version of Walmart.
Exactly. They had everything.
You could buy your shotgun and your shells and then your bicycle tubes for people who know what those are. But literally, and my very first big auction was around 1980. I'd been in the auction business 1 year, and there was a White's Auto in Gainesville, and it's the same store that I'd bought every skate key or what for people who know what those are.
I remember.
But that's where you bought everything. And so Mr. and Mrs. Norton ran that store, and he was in his probably late 70s, maybe pushing 80. And let me tell you about business cards. So I'd gotten out of auction school in 78, and I walked the streets of Gainesville. And you got to remember, I'm 19 years old. I went to every single store on Main Street and introduced myself. And I already knew them all because I'd been seeing them for years. And I would give my business card, and I'd say, I'm an auctioneer now. If I can ever help you, let me know. And, of course, I had a relationship with most of California Street growing up as a kid, because I was the nerdy kid on a bicycle that would go visit retailers at 7, 8 years old. And so I'm just...
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So here's Mr. Norton. I said, well, if you ever think about selling out, let me know. And he goes, I'm thinking about it right now. Now, you got to admit, a man puts faith in you at 19 years old. That's big, because this is his life savings. This is everything they had worked for 50 years to accumulate. And his wife looked tired. They were done. They were done. So that was my first $100,000 auction. And a $100,000 auction in 1980, was like $500,000. It'd be like $600,000-700,000 now probably. Wow. And but it was awesome. And there were 600 people to 800 people there. It lasted 24 hours. This auction went straight, no stopping. There were people literally that bought things in the morning, went to work in the afternoon, and came back at midnight and stayed with us until it was over at 9 or 10 the next morning, whatever time it was. I've got pictures of that sale, and I got a lot of photos. It's just fun to look back. But here again, the value of a business card, the value of asking for the business. That was my network. And
people don't ask.
People don't ask. And you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right. There's a business card story that I'll tell you just briefly. I was walking in cold. We did something called cold calls. You had to do them. I hated them, but I loved them.
Yep.
It was a love-hate relationship. But I had kind of a yucky meeting in the building next door, so I would always go into the building or the office right next door and say, I was just over next door visiting with so-and-so, and whatever.
Credibility.
Yeah, credibility. Or
I didn't tell you it was good.
The biggest name in the building,
Yep.
whatever. But I walked into this printer, and I walked in with a guy. There was nobody at the reception desk. This was one of the larger printing houses in Dallas at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I said, well, I'd like to see the owner. May I? And there's no, he said, well, the receptionist, she's probably just taking a short break. Let me have your business card, and I'll take it back to him. I gave him my business card. And I noticed him doing this to it.
Mm-hmm.
He was feeling it.
Checking out the card stock.
Exactly. And the fact that the surface was
Raised.
laminated, slick, over raised. And so about 5 minutes later, he comes walking back out. And I thought he was going to take me to meet the owner. And he said, I'm so-and-so, the owner, and I was noticing that you had enough pride in yourself to invest some money in your business cards. Come on back. I'd love to talk with you. He was my client for the next 10 years because not of my personality, not of what I said, not of the approach I made, but the fact that I didn't have a cheap internet business card.
I did exactly the same thing in '78 when I got out of auction school. I went to the local printer, and I picked the stock, and I went with the raised, which it looked like it was painted on. You know, it was great. But I just, I've always tried to approach things that way. And I would equate that to, for people that are trying to get into business or get started in business, I would equate that to your website. Mm-hmm. Look, we can all use a templated website. You can build your own website. Why would you do that? This is your new calling card. This is probably the biggest presence you're going to have. People will accidentally find you there if you do invest in making sure that you're at the top of the search page, or you get the traffic built up through a lot of different processes. I probably had, by now we've probably changed our website 7 times over the last umpteen years. But my recommendation to anybody that's trying to create a business or start a business is invest your money wisely, but invest it in things that are going to make you look better than you are. Because most people don't have a track record. They're trying to establish themselves. This is a hard business to get established in.
Business, period, is hard to get established in. I can't even imagine your business, but I know the insurance business, the rate of failure in that was huge because, there was one key to success. Activity, and more activity. Yeah. And in the website issue, we started back in 1988 when we were 25 years old. We were looking at how we could continue for another 25 years. We'd never had corporate members. We'd only had individual members because we looked at the heart, not the company, not at your pedigree. And so we brought in just a small group of corporate members as what we call partner members. But I remember meeting with Stan Richards, the Richards Group, and he said, your website's, he said, it's amazing. You're in the top 10%. And you've done no SEO work. You've done nothing.
Yep.
So he said, it's organic, and that just doesn't happen. And I tell you the story, it doesn't happen. If you don't make it happen, your brand is your brand. Nobody else is going to build it. You are your own marketer. Nobody else is going to market you. You are your own storyteller. If you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell it for you, and it won't be the story you want told. So think about yourself as a marketing company, a PR company, just like Jeff Crilly here. Real News PR. Before there was fake news, he started this. How did I meet Jeff? He called me up, and he said, I've been told if I want to write a book in Dallas, I need to know you. And that book, he couldn't, it's a funny story, but Fox would not let him speak for money.
Right.
So he turned the book into currency.
Yep.
And when that currency got to a certain level, he retired from Fox, or quit, actually, went to his garage, started this company, and now he employs 24 former broadcast professionals. I think his latest hire was the producer of Good Morning Texas for a number of years. He's got 5 studios here at Lincoln Center, and he's building 3 more.
Sure.
But that came from an ask.
Well, and that's how I got involved with him, because he was doing a show over at the iHeart Studios, across the freeway.
I was on his show there too.
He had me on his show, and that's what really got this going about 3.5 years ago. And this is a great medium. I was in radio in the early 80s, loved it. It was just so much fun. Of course, this is back when you spun records.
You spun records, but you learned how to talk.
I did.
You learned how to project, and thus the auctioneer.
Well, it was really cool because I started in radio at the exact same time I started actually to be an auctioneer. So I would pitch, I would do commercials telling my audience that, hey, this is Mike Jones, the auctioneer, not the radio personality. And so then I would pitch my upcoming auction. And that's where it all, that really just started coming together. But, but people don't understand that, anything you do well, it requires a lot of work. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was arriving at the police station at 4. I was gathering the police news, and by 5 o'clock I was producing commercials. At 6 a.m. I was signing on and go till 9 in the morning, and then do sales work for the radio station all afternoon or all day, and doing auctions for Joe Small on Friday night and doing my own auctions on the weekends. So, I think if you're driven, you just drive.
Oh.
You don't wait for anybody, you just push. And
that's you say that, and that I remember when I started in the insurance business, I was looking for a way to set myself apart from the herd. There was a donut store called Southern Made down by Love Field.
Remember them?
They had the best donuts in the world. I thought I would go pick up 4 2-dozen boxes, 4 boxes of 2 dozen each, at 4 o'clock in the morning. That was as early as I could get them, 3:45 to 4, and I would go to UT Southwestern, the medical school, because that's when the interns and the residents, the rounds were starting. Shortly thereafter, they usually started them 5-ish, whatever. And I got known as the donut man. I was the donut man. I went down there 3 days a week for too long. But I wrote insurance all over that hospital and all over that school. And the security guards knew who I was. The doctors knew, oh, you need to go, disability income, and you need to go talk to Wallace. The donut guy. Yeah, he's here. He may be here now. But it's like you going to the police department. What do you all do? What do you do to set yourself apart from the herd?
Yeah, it was fantastic. That's a great idea. I will tell you this. Whenever I go speak at a commercial real estate office about doing auctions, one of the greatest hooks in the world is to take Chick-fil-A breakfast. If you want to make sure you're going to have a full room, let them know that you're going to have a meeting that's going to include Chick-fil-A, and you'll have a full room. You just will.
Every Chick-fil-A owner out there, listen to that. You need to call this guy.
Well, listen, we've done it in Nashville, we've done it in Raleigh, we've done it in Charlotte, and
wow.
Yeah. So, I think that helps us with our commercial real estate, because commercial real estate brokers, they do have meetings. It's harder to get them to come into the office than used to, because most people today that are in real estate are working from home or working from their vehicle. Very few of them go into the office. So what you do is you get with whoever is managing that office and say, I'd like to have a meeting with your people, and we're going to buy them breakfast. And then now you can even have Chick-fil-A deliver it.
Oh, yeah.
Along with the orange juice and everything else, and you can have Starbucks coffee or whatever you want to do. But you have to think differently now than ever before. We just listed a $6.5 million industrial commercial property in Humble, Texas, right outside of Houston. And we're networking with Colliers International. I've been working with Colliers now for about 15 years.
Great company.
Great company. And we've got closings this month, and of course, we're always looking for more. And we just did a big auction in Colorado where we had 25 properties we sold in one day between Aspen and Grand Junction, with our office out in Hotchkiss, Colorado. I do a lot of referral work. I do a lot of joint venture work. And all they have to do is just call and say, hey, Mike, would you look at this? Because we're in a situation now where, especially with the economy, because of the pandemic, 2020 in hindsight, we're using new methods to sell things. So people are now actually more open-minded to the auction method of marketing than ever before.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And that's what's happening right now. Because all you got to do is drive through Dallas right now and look at the closed restaurants. You and I both know the restaurants that we've lost in North Dallas that are really tragic, in my opinion. Of course, Frisco just got better with Three Forks. But, but there's still a lot of folks, we're predicting now probably 30% to 35% of the restaurants in the United States are going to go up, are going to go out completely.
And they may not own the building or the
They typically
property.
don't.
Yeah,
Typically don't.
But the guts to an inside of a restaurant is a huge resale market.
Well, there's being sold like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, my old partner down in Austin, he posted a restaurant in Dripping Springs about 2 hours ago on Facebook. And so you're seeing more and more of that. You're going to see it, but it's going to be in everything. I've got a jewelry designer in Houston we're looking at working with. He's got about $3 or $4 million worth of inventory that he'd like to sell because it's not something he's moved up to a higher level. His clientele is a higher level. He designs it. And this is stuff that he probably did 10 or 15 years ago and doesn't even have a retail outlet like that anymore.
You said something, joint work. Many of us, we're entrepreneurs, and many of us in the entrepreneurial community, we think we can do it all, and we can't.
No.
If you don't build a core team around you, you will fail. And this joint work, especially in this pandemic, last year was a year where a year became a month became a week became a day, and a day became hours. And we were moving that fast. And tragic the pandemic is, but last year was also a year of opportunities. It was a year to weed out some perhaps dead weight. It was a year to find some really great people. And it was a year to try those things that you just never had the time to try. And that still is going on. And this is still a land and a time of opportunity. Just like not reinventing the auction business, but going more into the real estate side. And then I see these big houses, these huge houses that are being auctioned by, there's a company out of California that I don't remember the name.
And that's what we do too. We're chasing the luxury market.
Is that a new market for you in the last year, or is that an ongoing market?
No. In fact, I've got if someone is interested, I'll be happy to email them or send them one of our institutional brochures. But we've done luxury properties in Colorado where they're on the side of a mountain, $10 million original cost, never been lived in. Developer out of Florida built it to his specs, and it's been sitting empty for 5 to 10 years. And finally, he just said, it's time to go. They had tried to sell it, but never had any luck selling it. We took it to auction and got it sold and closed within 30, 45 days. And I think that's what we bring to the table. I just did a proposal on a couple of $1 million home down in San Antonio at Canyon Lake. And house has been for sale for about a year. It's never been lived in. It's brand new. The owners are in Houston. They have no debt. And they're ready to go. And so what the auction will do, whether it actually gets it sold or not, it puts the spotlight on the property. And I love the analogy that our CEO from the previous company would say about an auction. He said, you walk into a room and you fill the floor with white ping pong balls. You paint one red. Which one is everybody going to look at? And that's what auction marketing does. It's going to make everyone look at the red one. Now, they may not like it once they get up close to it, and they may rule it out, but it's not because they haven't been exposed to it. And I think that's extremely important.
So you just set it apart from the herd.
Set it apart from the herd. That's right.
Fabulous.
Okay, I've got a couple of things I want to talk about.
All right.
We're going to switch gears for just a minute. Football.
Football.
We had a great weekend of football. Probably one of the best weekends of football in any time that I can recall, at least from the professional level. I've been real down on the NFL for a lot of political reasons, and everybody knows I'm not.
Me too.
I'm not a kneeler. I don't go for that kind of stuff.
No, I'm an American.
Yeah, I'm American first, God first, country, family, the whole 9 yards. So, we had the Chiefs play. Mahomes gets a little banged up. I got a little worried on that one.
I did too.
And I'm a huge Kansas, and everybody knows this. I've told them on Facebook. I've been a fan of Kansas City since I was probably 10 or 11 years old. It was my mother's team, so I embraced Kansas City Chiefs, and then our corporate office is in Kansas City.
Okay.
And on and on.
I went to the Kansas City Chiefs games when they were called the Dallas Texans at the Cotton Bowl when I was in my teen years.
Sure.
And the Hunt family, and you couldn't talk about a better football team.
No. Well, I was a big fan, and so I went to auction school in Kansas City. Western Auto was in Kansas City. Everything that embraces the last 35, 40 years for me really revolved around Kansas City. Dallas, of course, is where I'm from, and things happen here, but it started up there. And so a lot of friends up there that are just diehard Chief fans. And Kansas City's a great city. I got to tell you, it's great. And then commuting back and forth for 8 years, every Monday and Friday, that'll give you a lot of time in Kansas City. So the Chiefs are going to move on to play Buffalo. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a hell of a game. Because let me tell you, Buffalo is for real, and their quarterback is for real. So are we predicting the Chiefs?
I'm pulling for the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have something in their DNA. There's a charismatic effect that the Chiefs have, and I think that the Chiefs will pull it out.
And you and I alike are huge Hunt family fans. I mean, we are believers in even going back to when Lamar named the Super Bowl and Clark. And I know you've interviewed Clark on your show before. His brother's a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually looking at doing some marketing with FC Dallas and getting some seats right now, because now is a great time if you want to have some marketing opportunities at an affordable price. FC Dallas is great. And the funny thing is, those are people you could actually talk to. If you wanted to talk to Clark's brother about FC Dallas,
pick up the phone.
And that's unheard of.
There's also another group in Frisco, the Texas Legends, which is the NBA's G League.
Yep.
And it's owned by Cuban, Donnie Nelson, and Evan Wiley, the Wiley family.
Yep.
And we picked up floor seats there years ago, but I helped them start their networking group 11 years ago, and now they do 4 different events every single month, even in the off season. So you talk about golden opportunity. FC Dallas, the Texas Legends.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, Frisco is, going to be and will continue to be a force to be reckoned with. And you've got the baseball team, there as well. So let's talk about Green Bay and Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady against Green Bay.
I watched that game. I don't even think I took a break at halftime. That was one of the best games. And Tom Brady, I thought several times, and I know one of the media people said this, but I thought I was watching the New England Patriots.
Yep.
And I would love to see Tom Brady win one more Super Bowl. And I would love to be the one that calls his former coach and said, "And do you have any comment?" I'd love to do that. But I'm having a hard time. I'm pulling for Brady, and in many ways, Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks again all time. That's going to be the quarterback bowl.
Yeah, you can't. Well, that's what's happened is we have the 4 best quarterbacks that you could put into the games. Period.
Probably all 4 are in the top 10 quarterbacks, I think, ever that played the game.
Yeah. We're living in a different world now because the players are so much, they're just better.
They are.
Some of them are bigger. You look at Brady for his age, he doesn't look anything like his age.
No.
And
his mobility, my gosh.
And then you look at Aaron Rodgers, and he's got all the features. He's built right. He can do things with a football throwing that you don't see anymore.
And how tall is he?
I think he's 9'7".
6'5", 6'6", something.
He's a big guy.
Yeah.
He's a big guy because he can see. And I'm really surprised that Breeze has had the success that he's had because he's short. You know, I mean, they say it's amazing that he can throw that ball and have that wall in front of him. Now, granted, he had a bad night. You know, 3 interceptions.
He had a horrible night.
He had a terrible night, and I hated to see him go out like that because he probably will retire. He's probably there.
I'd say the odds are probably 80-20.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to touch on before we wrap today. The inauguration is coming up. We're living in probably the most challenging time since the 60s. You know, a lot of people forget about how challenging the 60s and early 70s
The
were.
Vietnam era was...
Well, listen, in 1972, or 71, 72, we lived outside of San Francisco, outside of Oakland. And the Black Panther Party had pretty much taken over public places. Our next door, we lived in a fourplex on the Cardenas Strait near Vallejo in Benicia, California. The kid downstairs was the all-state quarterback for the state of California. He was shot with a deer rifle in our hometown. A girl I went to junior high with, her dad owned the Chevron station downtown. It was blown up. So when people start talking about how destructive we are now, they might want to go back and check the history. See, we didn't have the cell phones with the cameras. We couldn't shoot video back then. You know, things happened everywhere that nobody even knows about.
Well, we didn't have... there was no instantaneous communication.
I want to talk about the news. And you're very familiar with the news. I'm extremely familiar with the news, and you know, we used to have journalists that were actually doing newscast. And I found it funny. I was watching, I still watch everybody because I want to see what the idiots are saying. But they openly call their news shows now shows. They don't say news. They don't say newscast. They literally say the show. But they're reporting like they're reporting the news. And it took me back to a guy that you're familiar with, and I am too, and a great singer, Don Henley. And if you think about the song that he did called Dirty Laundry, it talks about the newscaster with a gleam in her eye, giving bad news. And that seems to be exactly where we are right now. It is painful to hear commentary from supposedly a journalist. And the fact that they even call themselves journalists really
That's wrong.
Irritates me.
That's wrong.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts real quick on that?
My thoughts is the news has become a biased machine that's being used to story without any emphasis that there is, not emphasis on the other side, but without any comment that there is possibly another side to the story. I'll never forget, this was 10, 15 years ago, one of the major stations in North Texas got a new GM. I used to watch the station. 6 months later, I had the opportunity to have lunch with him. And he said, "You watch channel blank news?" And I said, "I do not." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because it's become, in my opinion, and I don't want to offend you, but it's become pretty trashy." And he says, "Well, we have to get ratings." And I said, "Well, but you lead with all," he said, "if it's not bleeding, burning, been attacked, or dead, we don't lead with it." And I looked at him, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
But those were basically a quote.
Yeah.
He used a different word for one of them. But so, yeah, I think it's very biased. I think it's very slanted to one side. And I think it's a reflection of ownership and of quid pro quo.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Going back to football for just a second. Okay. So this was a gift from my friend, Dana Frederick, up in Gainesville. We have known each other for 55 years. We went to second grade together, and she gave me this for Christmas. And you'll appreciate this because this was put together in collaboration with Tony Dungy. And it's called Uncommon Life Daily Challenge. And so he mixes stories with biblical passages. And so it's like your daily devotional. It's just different. It's a different, I mean, and he's not talking about football. He's just telling stories. He's got, I mean, I really have enjoyed this. I've just started it, and
I'm going to have to get one of those.
you need to do that.
I need to get it.
And so that was just a plug for a great opportunity to get started well in the morning. Second thing I need to do is I need to send a shout out to my brother, Darren, who turned 57 last week. And we went probably 25 years because we weren't raised together. And so we have all come together as a family over the last 10 or 15 years, and especially with the passing of my father.
So I get to say that's your way older brother?
No, I'm the oldest.
Darren?
Let's be clear.
Oh, okay.
Let's be clear. And then the other thing about football is I've got to give a shout out because my daughter will appreciate this. My grandson just went. He played flag football last year and was doing he's just a natural athlete. I can't tell you, yes, I'm a proud grandfather, but I'm just telling you, this kid's talented. He scored 2 touchdowns out of the 3 yesterday, and he's the shortest guy on the field, but he's the fastest guy on the field. It's kind of like, Emmitt Smith is a friend, and I was watching an interview they did with him before the playoff game, and he was talking about that 92 year, and he said, the thing about it was, he said, I was short, and they couldn't see me. And so with that line that they had, with that offensive line they had, that's what gave him the boost to be able to set all the records that he did. But I thought it was a great analogy. So, I don't know what's going to happen with this kid, but he made me proud yesterday. I really enjoyed it because the season just started up again. And someone else I want to mention real quick, since the beginning of the year, we lost Charlie Pride.
We did.
And everybody knows I'm a huge country music fan, and I've done fundraisers with Charlie. I've auctioned off his guitars that he's autographed and all that stuff. Give me just a 30-second thought on Charlie Pride.
He changed the face of country music. He brought 2 cultures together. He came out of North Texas, and he was iconic.
People don't realize what a business person he was.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, his wife was brilliant. His wife, she made sure that they were where they needed to be, and he got involved. They put the bank in down there off of,
right.
I guess it was Royal.
Royal and Preston, I think.
No.
Was it? Or
Royal, actually, Royal and Old Denton.
Oh, okay.
Remember that one?
I remember that one.
It's a bank now, but it's not what it was then. No. But that was a big deal for an African American period to be a part of a bank. And
to get through the regulators, the African Americans back then, the regulation process was horrible.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine it. But I can imagine one thing. Several times I heard Charlie Pride give his wife all the credit.
Most of the time.
Right.
I mean, he never took, very humble man. We used to eat over at the, back, even before my daughter was born, when she was almost born. I can still remember a lot going to the original Pancake House when it was in the original location behind Saks. But he and his family would have Sunday. They would go there for Sunday late breakfast after church. So they would go to church and then they'd go to the original Pancake House, and they were there all the time. So, but those are those memories that you have. But I was very touched by his passing and wanted to point that out. Another thing, real quick, I have a friend of mine, actually 2, high school friend, Kevin Ricketts. And for those of folks that know me from Houston, I have a lot of friends that I went to high school with. I've stayed in contact with. We've gone to Astros games and all kinds of stuff. But Kevin is currently in Kazakhstan with his wife, and he's been with Chevron for probably close to 40 years. And I don't think he can get away from it. And so he's living there right now. And so for those, they sent me a note the other day asking for my mailing address. And I said, what we need to do is we need to do a podcast from there.
Oh, absolutely.
And
we'll market that through Success North Dallas when you do it.
All right. Well, I sent his wife, Becky, a note this morning. I said, I think it'd be great if we could do a podcast from Kazakhstan. So we wish them well and be safe, because anytime you're on the other side of the world, right now it's probably, I'm going to say, if I was a betting man, it's probably close to midnight. It's going to be close to midnight you know. So anyway, any final thoughts on anything?
You know, yeah, there's one thing I'd like to just simply not plug, but invite, an invitation. Success North Dallas will be virtual this Wednesday, 7 a.m. Our speaker is Ed Curtis. He's actually coming up from Austin, even though we're virtual, and we're going to do the broadcast from Jeff Curley's Anchor Desk studio, which is 2 studios down. You might even see me give a weather report or a traffic report as I look out the windows here. But Ed Curtis started something called, it was Inroad, and then it became Why Texas, the letter Y, and then Texas. And it's why major corporations are moving to Texas, why they're staying in Texas, why they're building second and third corporate headquarters in Texas, why they're moving their suppliers to Texas, no different than Walmart did to move companies to Bentonville, and the outlook for Texas for 2021. And I'd invite you all to that as our guest. Go to the website, which, if I may,
Sure.
successnorthdallas.com. successnorthdallas.com, all spelled out. Sign up for our mailing list to stay in the know. We just don't meet every third Wednesday at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. We also have happy hours. We also have other events. For instance, we gave away 2 tickets to every Cowboys game working with Lincoln Experience at the Star. So there's other things. To stay in the know, get on that mailing list, and you can register. I know that hopefully he will have enough, my buddy here will have enough time to be online for a little bit of it.
I will.
Even though he's got his auction school. And you'll be in keeping company with about 10 states, 3 countries. And we do have a virtual membership if you're 100 miles outside of Dallas. If not, we have a regular membership, but just come and enjoy it. Test drive us. We'd love to love on you.
That's outstanding. It's been great. It went by fast.
Oh,
I knew.
You're a storyteller.
Well, that's true. That's true.
I mean, I could listen to your stories all day.
Well, I feel the same. I feel the same with you. You and I were sharing a couple before we even went on, and I'll have you back on again. We'll do this again. This is not a one and done deal. I want to remind everybody that we do have school coming up Friday. AmericasAuctionAcademy.com. You can check it out between now and Friday and still get in the class if you want to. It's going to be about 15, 20 miles north of Dallas, near the Frisco, the Colony area, and it's easy to get to. It's right off of 121. I also want to remind people that the main thing that we do for a living is we sell real estate, and we sell real estate through traditional brokerage, but we also sell real estate through the auction method, live or online, whatever makes sense. We will definitely give you our advice on what we think. We don't take every project. That's one thing I will tell you. We probably pass on 9 out of 10. But if we do take your project on, you can bet you're going to get 100% effort on our part. We do commercial. We do luxury ranches. We do luxury properties in the mountains from California to South Carolina to New York and Canada and Mexico. We're in Costa Rica. We do work in Panama. And so Central America, we have people that can handle it, and we can always work with somebody on a referral. And thank you, Bill Wallace, Success North Dallas. It's been a great hour or so, and I look forward to seeing you again at the next networking opportunity. I'll be watching you on this virtual that's coming up. Highly recommend it. Let me tell you something. Everything that success that I have had is because of networking and meeting people just like you, and because the people that you meet make the difference.
You know, I often say I've got the greatest job in the world. I get to put 2 people together, take a step back, and watch the magic happen. And sometimes I actually get paid for it.
Oh, very good. Well, guys, on behalf of everybody that's been a part of this one, we thank Bill Wallace to be here, and also look forward to seeing you again on another episode of the Mike McGavel Jones Show from the center of the universe in Dallas, Texas, right here at the Tollway and LBJ. We wish you the very best. Pray for our country. Pray for our kids.
Amen.
Pray for our souls. God bless. We'll see you next time.